Hi everybody!
The Persona 4 remake is happening. With any luck, we might even see it at Summer Game Fest in June. Since I was replaying Persona 4 Golden for another video, and since the news of a P4 remake dropped, it got me thinking, what are some things I hope to see in said remake? Look, I love Persona 4 Golden. It was my gateway into the Persona franchise. The story is also pretty damn good. However, myself and a lot of other Atlus content creators feel like the extra storyline content that was added for Persona 4 Golden in 2012 wasn't incorporated all that well, feeling more tacked on as the social link to access it was shoehorned into the main narrative. That was one of the only glaring issues with Persona 4 Golden though. It's still a great game, but it's definitely showing its age now. The base game released in 2008. How many games from that period can you say aged well enough to hold up to modern games? I'd say very few. This is primarily because the later stages of the 6th gen and early stages of the 7th was a time period where game design was the Wild West, and experimentation was not only the norm, but was also encouraged. As I said in my previous video where I discussed the problem with modern Persona games, I noted Atlus were truly trailblazing with Persona 3. To think just 2 years later, they'd have improved that formula so much with Persona 4 is mind-boggling. Consider this. At its core, Persona 5, one of the best regarded games of all time, is just a more refined version of Persona 4 and 4 Golden. This proves just how well Persona 4 holds up, even if I feel some things could be tweaked to make the gameplay more dynamic. I'll also be doing a video about if a remake of Persona 4 makes sense, so subscribe if that seems interesting to you. As I said just a moment ago, there are some things Atlus could do to refine the gameplay to make it more dynamic. One of those things is including something like Theurgy from Persona 3 Reload, or the Showtime mechanic from Persona 5 Royal. While these features are in no way game-breaking, they do give some added spice to the formula, which I feel Persona 4 is now lacking, which makes sense given turn-based JRPGs were less involved during this time period and were a bit more basic. Hell, for its time, Persona 4 was considered really feature-dense, but adding something like that would just make a lot of sense. Another refinement I'd like to see is something akin to the Brave Orders from the Legend of Heroes franchise. Those could be downright game-breaking in the best way possible, but I feel like they truly added a layer of strategy to the game that wasn't present in other RPGs from that time period, and I'm honestly surprised no games have tried to incorporate them or something similar since. Especially when the enemies got their own Brave Orders in future iterations of that mechanic, as it actually made the enemy a bit tougher to deal with and made them feel smarter, which is something else I feel Persona 4's remake should address. So my third wish for the Persona 4 remake is Atlus actually giving us enemies that aren't just dumb punching bags. Sure, it's fun to beat scrubs into pulp to a point, but sometimes with Persona games, I just feel like I'm going through the motions until I hit a boss fight, and the boss is typically more of the same, just tankier. If I was playing on lower difficulties, this would be fine, but I've noticed even on the higher settings, enemies don't behave smarter. They just take longer to go down. To me, that's not harder. That's just wasting my fucking time. Which is frustrating, considering Persona games usually take over 100 hours to beat. So smarter enemies are just something I'd like to see. If you want an example of it done decently in an Atlus property, then look no further than Metaphor ReFantasio, which is genuinely challenging at times because the enemies actually play smartly. Clearly, Atlus can do it. They just don't want to with Persona games. Smash the like button if you like smart enemies in your JRPGs. So what's my final wish for the Persona 4 remake? I'd like to see them improve the dungeon design. Now, I'm not saying the ones found in the vanilla or golden versions of Persona 4 are bad. They just aren't as interesting as they could be. For all of its faults, Persona 5 got dungeon design right. Just not mementos, the endless grinding areas players could explore. How would I improve dungeon design though? For those who haven't played Persona 4 or P4G, the dungeons utilized mostly randomly generated layouts with a few floors being predetermined. For its time, this worked well, but tastes have changed significantly, and this is one area where Persona 4 really lags behind, because the dungeons are just bland to walk through. With more recent games, Atlus have fixed this issue, since Persona 5 utilizes its dungeon designs as elaborate set pieces, this being one example where a cinematic feel elevates the gameplay instead of just servicing the narrative. If you want to watch a video essay where I delve into that subject in more detail, a card will be on screen now. In that video, I discuss why cinematic games are boring. But Atlus also vastly improved the dungeon design for Persona 3 with Persona 3 Reload. Something akin to Reload's Tartarus is what I'm expecting out of a Persona 4 remake. Honestly, they could just reskin some of the Tartarus layouts to fit where you are in the story at that time, and I'd be happy. Basically, I just want the dungeons to be bigger and more interactive in the Persona 4 remake. So, are you excited for the remake, and what would you like to see incorporated into the game? Let me know in the comments. Thanks go out to my current channel members, R. Campbell, Danny Boy, and Doug S. If you become a channel member, you'll gain early access to most of my videos, exclusive content, and shoutouts during the credits. To become a member, simply hit the join button or the link in the description. Now check out my video discussing the problems with modern Persona, and until next time, keep blazing that trail.